An Interview with Rob Labelle by Aidan Hennessy. So, Rob, thanks for having me in your home.
Thanks for being here, Aidan.
Originally, I was starting off my interviews by doing the introduction for my guests, but I've actually started to realize, you know what? I like my guests to introduce themselves, and I like to hear who my guests think they are. So, Rob Labelle, who are you?
Oh my God. What the? Well, I'm sitting here in Vancouver, somebody who kind of made the way around North America, born in Minneapolis in the States, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Grew up there, so a nice Midwest boy. And then I, after high school, went to college in Rhode Island. And then I went from Rhode Island to grad school in New York. And then I went from New York to LA to live for about 10 years. And then I made my way up here to Vancouver. So that's not much. That's kind of a geographic description of who I am and where I've been coming from. God, that's a really good question. And I wish I would have known that you were going to ask me that question. I'm a Minnesotan. I'm an actor. I'll always think that I'm from Minnesota because I've been born there. So there's different sports teams, the Minnesota Twins and the Minnesota Vikings. Not a fan of the Minnesota Wild because it was the Minnesota North Stars when I grew up and then they got rid of them. So now I got the Canucks. I come by the Canucks. Honestly, acting is what has most inspired me in terms of things to do in my life. And I got the bug for that really, really young. I guess from watching my sisters, all three of my sisters who are older than me, they're 5, 7, and 9 years older than me. All three of them did acting when they were in high school and stuff, and I would watch them and go to the plays, and I just loved seeing them act. So kind of started doing that, and it's something that I feel in my spirit, even though I don't act as much as I would like or have never acted as much as I wanted to. It's what I kind of most get off on, where it really fuels me and it really inspires me, and it's just a really incredible process of transformation and of being able to inhabit all kinds of people and go different places. And it's fun. And I love working with other people. At my heart is that. And I love my family. I love my boys, my sisters and cousins. We've got a really great extended family. And so we kind of spend a lot of time, even though my sisters are all spread out, live all over the world, in Phoenix and Portland, Maine and Tel Aviv. And I got cousins up and down the West Coast of the US. We've all managed to spend a lot of time with each other by talking a lot and pictures and this and that. So our kids and then their kids and are all starting to get together and spend. It's really great. Reunions are a big thing with us. And so family is huge, huge, huge. I'm going to be talking all over the place. I'm just prattling on.
That's okay. That's the goal, man. That's the goal.
Then it becomes like it's like a session with your shrink or something like that. Where it's like, all right, they just kind of sit there and say,
Yeah. Well, I feel like that's kind of what I'm going to turn these things into. Like, I really want to get into people's minds and figure out who they are and learn about them. So
there's the start. That's a few things about me.
Mm-hmm. So acting was the thing that spoke to you the most as you went through life and sort of found your path,
I found inspiration really early. I mean, in high school, I knew that's what I wanted to do. That's what I wanted to be. I mean, I was in, once I did plays, it's like having a virus though, compulsion. You need to do it. I need to do it. In college, I mean, there were student theater groups, there was regular theater, but I did probably like 50, 60 plays in college, just was in one pretty much all the time. And we did Brown Summer Theater for a couple summers, which was rep theater, which was really great, and just did a lot of exploration, a lot of artistic exploration in college. And then I felt I wanted to go to grad school. Maybe if I didn't get in, I was only applying to a couple of schools, and if I didn't get into anything, I was going to probably go back to Minneapolis and start working in theater and try to train that way. But fortunately, I got into NYU graduate acting program, and that was a 3-year program. And I saw that as something to be able to like hone my skills so that my body and my voice could have the skill and the wherewithal to inhabit and to be able to portray those things that I could come up with in my imagination, that was going to allow me to have the greatest flexibility to transform and to start studying all kinds of performance. I studied a lot of I also went and studied a lot of non-Western theater. And I had a couple of professors who had spent a lot of time in Southeast Asia, in India, in Bali, studying all various kinds of performance. And so I did that as well. I studied a lot in college. Then I went to India and spent time studying. I mean, I was with this professor, John Amy, and his fiance at the time, Uli, and they were traveling. He was on sabbatical, and I'd said I wanted to, I wanted to go travel with him in India because he had been in Bali and had been studying shadow puppet theater, and he studied a lot of stuff in Bali. And then he was also exploring trade relations between Bali and northeastern India and Orissa, Bihar, and West Bengal. And there had been lots of lines of trade, and there was also a lot of theater that moved between the two. So he was now studying masked performances in northeastern India in those places. So I hooked up with them and traveled with them for 2 months, and we can get into that later as well. But
how old were you when you were doing this?
I took off between my sophomore and junior year of college, so I was 20. So I just took off the year. I didn't do it for credit or didn't, because I didn't want to have to be obligated to write a fucking paper or something like that, or have to be able to, I didn't know where my studying was going to go. So the first few months I worked that summer and made money. And then there was a girlfriend of mine at the time, and she'd only just finished her freshman year. She took off a semester, so we traveled in Europe in September, October, November, maybe 4 months it was, something like that. And then she went back home and went back to school, and then I made my way to India and spent 4 months there traveling around. So yeah, I was 20 years old.
Cool. What were the biggest differences you noticed between Western theater, Western performing, and Eastern theater and Eastern performing?
I saw it not so much as what were the differences, and just to completely answer the opposite question.
Sure, yeah. What were the similarities?
Because that's what was, because they are so different. I mean, in presentation, especially when I'm studying mask performances, various kinds of masks, some of which people, that are worn in their face. And what hit me is that a couple of things. Some of the performances, were in other languages. Every state in India has its own language and oftentimes different script. And with the mask performance, I remember one performance, it's a fixed mask that this performer was wearing. And we were watching this show, and at one point, the expression on this mask changed from it was this incredible smile, and then it just flipped over. Visually, it seemed
right
to this incredible sorrow that was happening. And I remember at that moment seeing this mask, which was immutable. It didn't actually change. And I looked, and my professor looked at me at the exact same time. And we had seen this transformation that happened before our eyes. So it was inside that performer.
Yeah.
It was so specific. It was so real, which of course it is, even though that the style of it was much broader. And, you're wearing a mask and different kind of very bold costume. And I started seeing what's consistent between all kinds of performances. That the external manifestation may change, and you might have a big clown nose, or you could have super realistic method style acting, American acting, or, you could have fancy clothes and big heels on, and a variety of different kinds of performance. The external manifestation just helps express what's going on internally, but it's what's inside the performer that is so very real. That's where the truth has to be. Whether it's big, broad comedy or it's really, really small, super nuanced, dramatic acting. And I saw the continuity between what is effective and what's not. And it really started putting my own understanding of performance and my own path at studying into perspective, because I got to get a lot of different tools here. I got to have a lot of ways that I can get into a character, and different characters and different plays or different TV shows or movies are going to present their own challenges, and each character is going to be different. You can't approach each character in the same way. I mean, it's ridiculous to do that.
Yeah.
And I remembered we were in a class in college, and we'd always have these assessments afterwards. If there was a play that happened on campus, this one professor would then, let's talk about the play, or we'd analyze, each other's scenes and stuff like that. And there had been a play that we did called, is it A Glass of Water? Eugene Scribe, I think it was, a well-made play. And it was these English plays about the French royalty. And it was really over the top, incredible costumes, fops, foppish hair, and like people acted, at that time people's ankles were seen as a particularly sexy part of the body, so you would lead when you were walking with the way you would stand. Your foot was kind of prominently displayed, and we only rehearsed from the very beginning in heels as we went on, and it was a really funny play, and it was a huge hit. And this professor who had an early career as this ingenue in New York City, and had been brought up with just kind of straight up method acting, and his critique, he was just across the board just said, what you guys were doing was so big. It was just, ridiculous. And blah, 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 blah. And then I remember saying, was it funny? He goes, it was very funny. And did people seem to they completely enjoyed it. And I said, so if we applied your method to this, it would have been fucking dull as shit.
Right.
It would have been so flat. It would have been like, it wouldn't have made sense.
Mm-hmm.
This play demanded a particular way in.
Yeah.
And then I kind of try to open up the classroom discussion to other people to kind of get people's, views in on that. And it's like, oh, you got that one little bit, your palette is really narrow. Your toolbox is, you got few things in that if that's the only way you can do it, and it's like, nah. Some characters, you're going to get into a major, you want to write a whole biography, a whole backstory about where this guy came from,
right,
and he's doing this and this and all that stuff. And, something else is like, I'm going to put on a big fucking red nose, and I'm going to start working from the outside in or the inside out. But there has to be truth at the end of the road. I mean, clowns, the most prolific clowns, can be very moving and can be very sad. So it really helped me understand what binds all that kind of performance together, which was really, really good. And also, when you watch something and it's in a different language, and sometimes I would know what the plot was, sometimes I wouldn't. And to me, that was always very freeing. It's like, okay, so it's not the words themselves that are going to be conveying meaning and import, and I'm free of that. And now I can get everything else can wash on me.
Mm-hmm.
Which I sometimes would do some early on in high school when I would go to see Shakespeare plays, like at the Guthrie Theater in Minneapolis. And I would go to see a lot of theater, and my family saw a lot of theater. And if I hadn't, which in high school I usually wouldn't read the plays beforehand, sometimes I could just read the summary of it, but other times I was like, I don't care. I'm going to let it wash on me. I'm going to get some of this shit. Some of them I'm not, but I'm going to get a bunch of other stuff. So it frees you up in a lot of different ways to soak into meaning.
Rather than let it get in the way, right?
Yeah. Like, oh my God, what did he say? Oh, I missed that. It's like free up a little bit. So yeah, for me, it was really an extraordinary experience going to India in general and traveling, but specifically watching this kinds of different performance.
Mm-hmm. So now specifically in this time of your life, what are the tools that you've gained from all your experience that you use the most? Because you mentioned the toolbox, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, because it's mostly TV and film roles, and they look and seem like regular people in lots of ways. So it's a lot of basic things and a lot of kind of basic acting stuff of where it's, there's intention and motivations.
Yep.
And obstacles to those things, just really fundamental, which, makes sense because there's a lot of forward movement in these scripts, and there's characters, that have purpose and a reason for being there, and you try to understand what that purpose is, what the character is in the story and to the entire production, and then specifically what drives that character. And kind of go moment to moment as well. So a lot of times I won't necessarily plan it out so much. If I have a little bit more time to work on it, which you always like to have, then start getting clear and clear intentions. So it's going back to some basic acting 101 stuff, but it really kind of helps you be clear about that. And a tool that I've learned as I got older is also to not get in my own way.
Right. Okay.
And to not prejudge I never want to judge my characters that I'm playing. You can't judge them. You can't fully inhabit them. If you start criticizing them or try to, excuse them, or, you have to be able to just let it go and have some basic notions of what you want in a scene and where you're going with this character. And then also trust that it can go places that you don't know about.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's really important, because, sometimes you get in and it's like, fuck, or if I was having trouble getting lines down for some particular role, as soon as I just relaxed and let it flow, it just came out, and I really did know these different things. So it's not to not get in my own way and to let it go in directions I never thought it could go in.
Yeah.
And to have confidence enough in my ability to let it go.
Because that's where the realness comes from, right? If you're a person in a situation, you don't know what comes next. And so if you can fall into that as an actor in a scene when you know what's going to happen in the scene, but if you let it get to a place where you discover what's happening while you're doing it.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Place,
and you don't,
right?
From moment to moment, you're not sure what's going to go on. You react in completely different ways.
Yeah.
And you don't judge it and you don't set it, because if you set it, it's going to be fucking boring. And and then also you have the freedom to be able to be in the day, in the moment, whether you're rehearsing and you have a chance to rehearse, or you're just listening to that other person and you're bringing in that, because you may have planned a lot of specific things, but all of a sudden you're in a space that is different than what you imagined, and a person who's coming at you in a different way, and you got to be loose. You got to be able to play with that.
That was a question I had for you, was how important is the other person's performance for you when you're in a scene with somebody or multiple people?
It's incredibly important.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of magic can happen, and where you can just play. And, it's fantastic when it goes in places that you couldn't have imagined it going. And when you have somebody else or many other people who you're bouncing off of who have that great skill level and that freedom. That being said, you have to then, there's a whole substitution thing, or bestowing qualities on the person you're opposite who might be a little challenged in some way, or who nothing's happening, or they got nothing going on, or they are, what the fuck? You can't play to that. So then, there's certain, you endow them with certain qualities, and they become maybe not what's right there on the page. But it's much better if somebody's really great, and then you go off.
You don't have to name names, but I'm curious, who's someone, like, what's a performance that you did where you were across from somebody and you were just like, I'm getting nothing from this guy or this person?
Well, it was a show that turned into a big hit that was shooting here, and it was a great gig. And I was living in LA at the time, and it's like, fuck, it's a great job. It's playing over 2 weekends, and I get to hang out in this gorgeous city. Really fun role. And the show at that time wasn't a hit. It went on to become a cultural phenomena. And this was an early episode, and opposite one of the two leads, and there was, like, I thought nothing going on.
Right.
It just, like I had described, like, it was so flat.
Yeah.
And so low key, which turned into, like, kind of the signature of this performer in some ways. That is a general quality in many roles that he's done. And I think he's a very skilled actor in lots of ways. But it was really unnerving. And and it was opposite. Like, my character was in a complete heightened state of something going on.
Right.
So I just tried to, and I didn't want it to be like he is this flat level with no modulation. And, and I was doing a bunch of other stuff, which sometimes is a tendency of mine. Like, it's always a problem if somebody's like, Rob, we just, really want to beef this up. It's like, don't tell me to beef something up. Don't tell me to, like, be a little bit more. Cause then it's like, oh no, it's going to be like, stop him. It's way too much. But this one was that. And I was, like, beside myself, but you just do your work, and then you just trust your preparation. And okay, somehow you're not getting anything from this person, and try to see if I could use that in that one. I don't remember imbuing him with anything. It was just like, I gotta there's nothing coming at me the other way.
Right.
So yeah, that happened that way.
I feel like I have an idea of what TV show this is, because I saw you on a TV show that became a huge phenomenon. So I feel like I know what you're talking about, but I won't say. I won't say. But yeah, I'm pretty sure I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So it filmed in Vancouver and then moved to LA? Or okay, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, and it was because of this actor that it moved to LA, I think.
Yeah. So we can neither confirm nor deny that.
Yeah. I remember watching that episode, and I remember seeing you and being like, "Holy shit, Rob!"
Yeah, it was really fun. It was a blast.
I bet.
There was Nicholas Campbell, Da Vinci's Inquest, which was a series that shot in Vancouver for many seasons. An incredible bunch of, so many people in Vancouver. It shot for like 5 or 6 seasons, and then it became Da Vinci City Hall for a couple of years. And I had the great fortune of doing a few episodes of that, like 4 or 5, playing a lawyer who defends like people against cops who beat them up and stuff like that, and corrupt cops and all this stuff based on a real character. Anyways, but the lead who played Da Vinci, I watched that show. I'd watched the show for years before I was on it, and it just seemed so, it's shot on the streets, downtown East Side, and it's very almost like cinema verite. It's so realistic, and the dialogue is so fresh and seemed always like it's improvised. And pretty much all my scenes were with Nick, and he seemed particularly the loosest guy in the world, and watching his things. And this was a situation where like I got opposite him, and I realized when we you have just a tiny bit of a rehearsal when they're setting up the cameras and you walk through it and then you do camera rehearsal. And he was fucking word perfect. Like nothing was improvised. And he was like one of those guys where it was like, holy shit. And nothing that I had thought in my head did we do in the scene. He was so alive and was so in the moment. It was delightful. Like we were doing jazz improvisation.
Yeah.
But it was still word perfect, and it was lifted off the page, and he was a revelation. He was extraordinary. It was just one of the most delightful experiences I had, and I loved going to work there because I got to be with him for most of them. There's one scene where it was cops picking me up on the side of the road and then just banging my head into a hood of a car. So that one was a little different. So,
well, okay. You know what? This is totally like not related to anything we were talking about, but it is something I wanted to ask you about. So when I was looking things up about you and checking out films that you'd been in, I decided to sit down and watch the Ike and Tina Turner film.
Yeah.
And you played Phil Spector.
Yeah.
When you were 29, I think, right?
Yeah. Was I that? Yeah, I don't know how old, but yes, I did. Yeah. In LA, we did that. Yeah.
How was it for you taking on the role of somebody so iconic, so publicly scrutinized / obviously controversial person?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, what was that like?
It was pretty intense. It was a crazy process because I had auditioned once somewhere in LA, and then about 5 days later, I had a call back, and it was going to be downtown LA in the producer's trailer because they were already shooting the show.
Mm-hmm.
So you're walking around and you're seeing people that are in costumes, and you got to see all these people walking around and walking by, and Lawrence Fishburne, who I'd met a couple of times before, it was Larry Fishburne then, had passed by, but he's dressed as Ike, and he's like, "Hey man, how you doing?" And there was like, but I went in, did the audition. I had done a fast read about some stuff with Phil Spector, but right now it was the scenes, and I remember getting out of that audition, and I was so fucking sure I had blown it. It was one of the times where, and I've learned from that, sometimes you just have clueless.
Yeah.
But I was really despondent over it. I just was like, fuck. I had such a good chance. What a great role. That would be so fantastic. And I went out and just got drunk. And I had gone out and it was like, and then I found out the next morning that I'd gotten the job.
Nice.
So that was a Wednesday morning I got the job. I was going to start working on Friday.
Yeah.
And now I was playing this real, like you said, this iconic Phil Spector.
Yeah.
So in short order, I started doing a lot of research, and I found out that Phil Spector was not accessible at all. He wasn't going to be, I wouldn't be able to talk to him, see him, or anything like that.
Yeah.
He has nothing. Apparently, he could approve who they cast, but he was not available.
Yeah.
So started doing a lot of research about him. And one of the first things I did, I found out that Sonny Bono was his right-hand man, and they were like best friends in the early 60s.
Wow.
And Glenn Campbell was his studio guitar player, too. Glenn Campbell was a part of it. I mean, you have these incredible people. But Sonny Bono at that time was now mayor of Palm Springs. So I called information and said, could I get the Palm Springs mayor's office? And called, and phone answers, hello? I was like, hi, could I speak with Mayor Bono? That's me. He answered the phone directly. I was like, okay. Oh, hi, my name's Rob Labelle. I just got cast in this movie. What's love got to do with it? Playing Phil Spector.
Yeah.
And I understand. He goes, have you read my autobiography? I said, I have not. Okay, well, go get it. Read the chapter. There's a whole chapter on Phil Spector. It's called And the Beat Goes On. Read the chapter about Phil Spector, and then you call me back tomorrow. So I went out and got a copy of it, read the chapter about it, where it was all, this very specific stuff about his life with Phil Spector, and tried to get an idea of some things there.
Mm-hmm.
I also tried to hear what he talked like, and found that there was like virtually no recordings available of Phil Spector talking. There's one Christmas album that he put out where he has a couple of sentences he says.
Okay.
And I kind of went through that and heard that. But then he's in the opening of Easy Rider.
Phil Spector's in
Phil
it.
Spector,
Really?
he plays a drug dealer. And
Okay.
there's a deal that's made at the top of the movie.
Yeah.
There are airplane and stuff like that.
Yes.
And that's Phil Spector.
Yeah. I know exactly the scene you're talking about.
So
Yes.
I heard a little bit of that. Plus, I heard Sonny Bono kind of imitating him
Mm-hmm.
for me on the phone, because then I did call back, and I'm sure Sonny Bono checked out, like, is this guy for real? Did he really get cast in this? Should I be able to talk to him? But Sonny ended up, like, the next day, I spent 45 minutes on the phone, and he just started telling me stories about him.
Yeah.
And he's been cut off. He was cut out of the inner circle with Phil Spector in mid-60s.
Right.
And so he felt he could talk about it. And then, or he felt he didn't mind talking about it. But then I had also quickly found out that there's a comic book store on Melrose. And that comic book store is owned by a guy who's an associate of Phil Spector. So I went to the store and told him, and he wouldn't talk to me. Because I think that anybody who is still in his circle wouldn't talk. And I wasn't asking for dirt. I was just like, can you tell me about
who is he?
Can you talk? Who is he? And what's this? Blah, 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 blah. So
Yeah.
it was pretty quick. So I talking to Sonny Bono, doing some fast research. Neil Young's first solo album was produced by an associate of Phil Spector. So it was basically a fast
Crash course on who he is.
course. And then on Friday, I had to start working. So for me, and also the whole thing with his hair, like, because he wore a lot of wigs. He had real hair and then other hair. So they put me in a wig for this, but it was like, oh, this is okay, because it could be seen as having a wig, but he wore fucking wigs.
Yeah.
He was a millionaire by the time he was 18 years old. He went to Fairfax High School.
Wow.
And that's where he grew up, right there in Hollywood, block from Cantor's. But his acumen was incredible. So it wasn't playing this guy who, became a bit of a freak.
Yes.
And
I think, did he murder his wife, or what was the... Yeah. So a bit of a psycho.
Girlfriend at the time. Yeah,
he put it very mildly.
Yeah, he was a gun freak. He had lots of guns in his mansion in Pasadena.
Mm-hmm.
But he produced, the Stones and the Beatles.
And
yeah, it was just really incredible. So it was a fast study, and listened to a lot of that music. It was like 2 days where I didn't fucking sleep, and then went there. And then to be able to work on that movie in one of the scenes where we're recording River Deep Mountain High, and we're in, what's the Sunset Studios? I'm spacing on the name now. Big famous studio on Sunset. And we recorded in the actual place. And there was a 85-person orchestra and all the backup singers.
Yeah.
And really at that place where he really recorded River Deep Mountain High with her. And then Tina was coming, and we knew she was coming to set at one point. And while I was doing a scene, I can hear from like off, and it's kind of the green room, singing River Deep Mountain High. And it was Angela Bassett and Tina Turner singing it together.
Wow.
Not to be recorded, just like shooting the shit.
Yeah.
Singing it. And it was just like, oh my God.
That's cool.
That was really cool.
Yeah.
So it felt like, but you just had to dive into it. I had no time to think about that. And I didn't think like, I'm playing this icon. It's just like, I just gotta
do it.
I gotta do it.
How regular is that for them to like be in production and then still casting people?
Yeah. I'm sure it happens all the time, or I know it does happen all the time, but that seems a little late. I don't think they had cast somebody and it dropped out.
Do you think maybe they didn't even know that they were going to put Phil Spector in it, and then they discovered that along the way?
No, it was there. It was, a handful of scenes. So I think they knew. It might've just been a chaotic production or something like that, or it just was, just came so late.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why, but it was fun. It was fantastic. It was really incredible experience.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of fun.
Okay. So to move on from there, who's a character you've always wanted to play, but haven't played?
Wow. I should have something like that ready. I really want to play George in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf.
Okay. I haven't seen Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf.
Yeah, it's an incredible play. Edward Albee.
Right.
And then it was a movie that.
Yes. Yeah, I know it's very famous.
I've been wanting to do that play, and I haven't pushed enough to try to get that production happening.
And would you want to do it in its play form?
Yeah, in its play form.
Gotcha.
I want to do the theater production of that.
Cool.
Yeah. And right now I'm probably the perfect age to do it. So I guess I should really think about getting my shit together and doing that. But that's number one on my list.
Cool. That leads me into, in terms of theater versus TV versus film, for you as an actor, where do you like to go the most?
Well, I haven't done theater in so long.
Right.
And, I mostly had loved, and, I got only myself to blame for not pushing harder or being more diligent about doing theater. There's definitely a number of friends of mine who go back and forth and effectively go back and forth from stage to film and TV.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping to get back doing, there's something that's so immersive about theater, whether it's a character who's on stage all the time or, just because it's live and you're in that moment. There's no second takes. There's no third takes. You can't fuck up.
Yeah.
If you fuck up, it's got to be a part of what is happening. You can't change that. So that's what has always been in my blood. But for whatever reasons, it's been now, except for some staged readings, it's been probably 20 years since I've done theater.
Wow.
It's been a long time. But overall, I got to say theater, but it's not obviously enough to make me do enough to get back to it. But
well, I guess once you start, once you get sort of comfortable when you're older and you're living your life, it's harder to go like, I want to jump back into theater. Because theater's a very like...
Well, I think, because I can audition for stuff and depending on, what's coming out, but like doing that would be a play that is specifically, I don't want to produce it as well, but I'd have to find a producer. I'd have to be involved with that production.
Yeah.
And there is an actress who I've wanted to work with who is in Vancouver and is back and forth between like New York and Vancouver. And I've told her that too. And I think she'd be into doing it. But, we haven't ever proceeded beyond that of figuring out how do we actually do that? What's the concrete, practical ways we can get this production done? So maybe I should revisit that and give her a shout after this interview.
Mm-hmm.
See, maybe try to get it done.
Mm-hmm. So tell me about your work as a producer.
Yeah.
Because you were also a producer for a while on a couple shows, at least that I know of.
Mm-hmm.
Mental.
Mm-hmm.
Was that your first production that you... Okay, cool.
Yeah.
How was that?
Mental was great. I mean, I had been given the opportunity by Bill Vince, who is no longer with us. He passed away in his mid-40s, Vancouver guy who's a very successful producer. He produced Capote, film Capote with Philip Seymour Hoffman, won an Academy Award for that. And first person Philip thanked when he gave his speech was Bill Vince. And Megan had gone to high school with him, and people know him from West Van and stuff like that. And I'd known him socially, and his then wife, Cynthia. Anyways, Bill had Infinity Features was a film production company, and I had known a couple of people who were working with him and for him, and he had called me, and I thought we were just meeting to kind of hang out and have lunch, and he ended up saying that they had people who, people want them to do television, but they don't have many television producers. They don't really know what's going on. I know a lot of showrunners. I know TV. I've been in TV, blah, 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 blah. How would I like to be head of their non-existent television division? And I wasn't going to get really paid. There would be kind of a stipend, sort of, and he said, yeah, you could still, do that other stuff. It's like, well, I kind of got to do that other stuff, the acting stuff, to be able to, because you're not really paying me much of anything. And he could have hired somebody who actually had professional skills and had a track record, but that started out of left field. So he really gave me this opportunity, and I started off from zero, not knowing anything. I know some things about the business, having been in it for a while, but it was really like, I had the name of the company, I had a office, a desk, a telephone, and was off and running. And he basically said, I want you to have something in development in a year and something in production like 2.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, I'll do that. And other people are saying to me, like, are you kidding? How's that going to happen? Like, really? How are you going to do that? And then a colleague of mine, Aaron Haskett, who's now runs Lark Productions, Lark Company, which is the most prolific television production company in Canada right now, with whom we partnered on Motive. And she was starting that first week as well. And she was head of development, I think, on the feature side. A couple of weeks after I got there, or like we went to Banff. And she, who's, like 20 years younger than me, but had more experience actually in production and development and on all that side. And she knew a bunch of people in Banff, and it was great. So we just sort of went there and dove in and just started taking meetings with different production companies and studios and networks. And I started calling around, also trying to find different scripts, broken pilots, scripts that didn't get made for one reason or another, but not because they weren't good scripts. And so I did end up having something in development in a year of a show that didn't go anywhere. I mean, it didn't go. And there was another friend of mine who was a manager at the time who then was starting to work with Fox, one of the Fox divisions, television divisions, Matt, who was an old great friend of mine, and he had been one of the producer executives on First Wave, which was this sci-fi series that I did in the late 90s, which brought me to Vancouver to live.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so one thing after another. I mean, Mental was a show that we shot in Bogota, in landlocked Bogota for LA. It takes place in a psychiatric wing of an LA hospital. That's a whole other crazy story that came out of the writer's strike of 2010, I guess it was, 2009, 2010, I think. And then with Motive, I had, there's an old friend of mine, Daniel Cerrone, who was a writer. The first thing he wrote for television was for First Wave. And he left after a year and started writing on a bunch of other shows, notably Dexter, which he was, though he wasn't the showrunner, he kind of really shaped and made that show.
Right.
And so he had a script called Suspect Behavior that was going to be a CBS, it was a crime drama in whatever year it was, and it didn't get made. It was slated to go. Turtle Tub was going to direct it, and blah, 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 blah. Anyways, it was scrapped, didn't happen. He had recovered the rights for most of the rights for it, and I read this script and was like, fuck, this is incredible. And I pitched it to a lot of broadcasters, and eventually kind of secured his path, got it optioned and picked up by CTV. And then it was a 3-year process to get it from when we were first picked up to the time where it was greenlit and we started production. It was a long, laborious, crazy process, during which time Bell bought out CTV. And,
Right.
So it was a whole change of regime, and normally just, wipe the table clean of any kind of project. So stuff was stalled for 4 or 5 months, and we had one showrunner and didn't work out, and another person, and they kept the project going, but we didn't get any more money. So now we had pissed away money here and there, and we still had to get it done. And anyway, so really tried to keep it in front of the executives who we were working with. And, sure enough, we got picked up and ended up playing for 4 years, and it was a big hit in Canada. And it's a great crime drama. And then it was played all over the world,
Mm-hmm.
and it has been. I'm not sure where it's playing right now, but it was a really great production. It was a fantastic show. And we assembled just a kick-ass crew. And it was at a time when the tax regimes had changed in Quebec and Ontario, and we were losing a lot of the people here.
Right.
So it was very slow, and it was really busy in other places. And after we finally convinced the broadcaster that we, are indeed going to be shooting in Vancouver, where the TV show takes place, we're not shooting Toronto for Vancouver, and that we were able to get top-notch A-level movie crew here.
Mm-hmm.
And we really created this family on set. And we also had limited resources. It was, we weren't a big studio behind us. We had a great distributor, and NBC Universal was our international distributor. And we ended up playing on ABC and down in the States and USA Network, but we couldn't go over budget because there just wasn't resources.
Right.
We just couldn't. So it was, we kept a tight 12-hour day and created an atmosphere on set. It was very important for us, for all the producers, to keep a place that was really a fun place to work.
Yeah.
And a dynamic. This is your home. This is what's going on. We're going to hire the best fucking people we can do, and then let them do their fucking job. Like not micromanage,
Yeah.
And crew people will still hear various people who are on it because we've seen them, or I'll be working with them, and it's like they call it the Motive way. And it was like, wow, we were going to continue to we wish we could get another production like that. Because many departments too are whole departments, and we retained about 85 to 90% of our workforce from year to year to year, which is incredible. That doesn't usually happen.
Yeah.
Attrition somehow, or another show gets picked up before that does, So we had a camera department where they kind of say to his guys, Matthias, hey guys, we're going to take this other smaller production. We don't know if Motive is coming back, but if it does, we want to come back to it. So people really try to organize their schedule in order to come back to it. So that was really a great, it was 4 years of production, right? 3 years of prep before that.
Yeah.
But it was really fantastic show to work on, incredible crew, incredible actors, and because it's a whole family. And so I really loved working on that because there's a lot of different skill sets, and a lot of different things I can do and work on it. I'm not a business producer. I'm not a money producer. A creative producer. And so that was fantastic. I mean, since then we had another show that was in development for about 3 years called Prison MD. That was with Chorus. That didn't go. We had a number of scripts written, and we were just on the verge of getting a green light for that. So it was Mental and then Motive were the two. There was another small web series that was a shoot off from Motive that I was involved with as well.
Right.
And then of late though, now I've not been working on projects of late.
Right, not doing any producing or anything.
No, I've been trying to do a few things, but it's not far enough along to talk about it.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. Well, we'll keep an eye out for it, and then hopefully it happens.
Yeah.
Also with Mental, I just wanted to ask about, you had David Carradine's final performance on that show, I'm pretty sure, right?
It was some good research you did. I don't know if it was his. It might have been. I guess I didn't know that. I knew it was one of the last ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was shortly after that he died. Yes. What were you? I didn't have.
Just curious if you were on set when that happened, or if you have any stories about. Did you meet him? Any of that kind of stuff?
I had been. So we shot in Bogota, and I was in Bogota a couple of times. Once early on, and then I went back again because I did a guest spot on the show, and so was down there for another 3 weeks after that. I did not have interaction with him. I think he was a challenge to work with. He did whatever he wanted.
Right. Because he thought of himself as, I'm David Carradine, I can do whatever I want kind of person. Right.
I think so, and so not knowing him personally, in terms of just sussing it out, and from, I was involved with the show, so I know a lot of people who were interacting with him on a day-to-day basis. So I think there was some attempts at some direction that wasn't met very well.
No.
That wasn't, it wasn't welcomed.
Interesting.
The notion that,
right. Which is not where you want to be as an actor. You want to be able to take direction.
You want to be a team player a little bit, You got some good stuff. Obviously, that's why people wanted him to be in the show. There's a lot of interesting quality and all that.
Yeah.
And he just sort of did what he wanted to do. And his off-campus, he just did whatever the fuck he wanted to do.
Okay, got you. Another question in the vein of, I asked you about a character you want to play.
Yeah.
What's an event you would want to be in a film or a play about, a world event?
Wow. That's another really good, challenging question. World event, wanting to be about. I'm kind of stumped.
A lot of good events to choose from.
I guess so.
You also don't have to name one. You can name a few that you find interesting that you think could be a good film or production or play or whatever.
Like the Cuban Missile Crisis was kind of nuts. I mean, that just a kind of the fraught political, intrigue and all of that, just the tensions that are so high. This seems to be an extraordinary time. I'd also been fascinated, though it's out of the realm now, with Lee Harvey Oswald, actually.
Okay.
And with kind of him ahead of Don DeLillo has an incredible book, and it's sort of his life beforehand. Because he went to Russia, and his wife was Russian, and her dad was a KGB general or some big, and he was stationed in Japan, and he knew Russian fluently as well too. He spoke Russian. His wife's dad was in Russia, and then he was in Japan, and just a real intriguing character and stuff. And so, I think that book. I don't remember the name of the book even. I think that would be a really great book. It would be really, really fascinating to bring that to life. And so it's not really an event. It's just kind of a proceeding, one of the most famous events, horrible times in American history, the assassination and what's there. So it just kind of calls into question a lot of who was he and where his connections were pretty far and wide. And the fact that he was a fluent Russian speaker, had connections into the Russian military and intelligence. And I don't know if he spoke Japanese as well.
You would like to explore more of who Lee Harvey Oswald was and why he did what he did, in a way.
Sort of the lead up, not necessarily why. Well, it could be the why. It's going to be, this is really an imagined thing. People are always questioning, was he by himself? Not to get into the whole conspiracy.
Sure, yeah.
But, I think
Oliver Stone already did that.
Yeah.
He got it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, I think that there's obviously a lot of material to work with around the JFK assassination and all that kind of stuff. So that is an interesting event.
Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to ask you about the industry. What do you think the biggest changes you've noticed throughout the years when you started in the industry to now? What are the biggest things that have changed?
Well, of late, post-COVID, where COVID, decimated in-person interaction, and it changed the way that people audition for things. You used to go in person into a place. I mean, you could go on tape for stuff. People weren't always in the city that was center of wherever the audition was. But, you'd go in and interact with producer and director, a writer, and even the casting people if it was an early stage and people didn't know if they necessarily wanted to bring you back yet. And so that's a big bummer that has changed. And, that's likely not coming back at all. I think there's occasionally there are in-person stuff, but that's really frustrating because you lose that human interaction. You lose that feedback. You lose the ability to kind of play and get what you want and being on the other side of the table. And, somebody comes in and they do something and it's like, that's not really what we're looking for, but you really got really interesting, really good. Can you try it like this? Try something else. And it's like, oh, then they surprise you and you go, wow, that's fucking great. And you won't get that off the tape. I mean, if your people are like now looking to see the performance they're going to see on the big screen or on TV when you do it in front of them, or when you send a tape in and self-tape and go in there.
Mm-hmm.
And anecdotally, there's stuff where people also, you don't get to see them being malleable or changing on a dime and trying something else. I mean, there's been times where at City Hall audition where I had gone in and done it one way and had direction from the casting director in a particular way. And then I went back with the director and he didn't know that that's exactly the way that the casting director directed me to do it. And then so he said, but how about do this? And it was a 180-degree change. And I nailed it. And it was almost that ability to transform and do something entirely different. That was as much of a reason I got the role as the fact that I hit the notes he wanted me to hit. So you don't get that anymore. So you get, and then anecdotally people come in and they'll be on set and there's some people who they're only able to do the role exactly the way they spent 5 hours doing their self-tape and they've got that down and they can't change. They can't be in the moment like with Nick from Da Vinci's, they can't change on a dime when something, you need to be able to have the skills to be able to do the same thing 20 times in a row or 20 different things 20 times in a row.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's a huge change. I think that's really, people are just left alone a lot more. It's really disconcerting.
It seems like it makes things maybe easier for the casting people and the production people, but way harder for the actors. I would think.
In some ways, I mean, a lot of people like doing the self-tape because they're like, it's on my own time.
Sure.
I can do it with whatever. I can, I got kids, I got this, I can't be at this office on Tuesday at 10 in the morning and that's the only time, it's like, so there are people who really like it. And there are now a lot more people who are seen for every single role.
Right.
Like it's exponentially bigger.
Right.
And
because basically you've got the whole world at your fingertips to cast from.
And they could do that, and see that. So there is in some ways a different kind of work for casting. They've got to somehow sort through all that shit.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff. So, and then there's a lot of people who are very excited because they're now reading for roles that they never had before.
Yeah.
But it's tough not having any response. It's not like I need response to the thing. Oh, it was really good, but we went another way. I don't need to, but just some working ability to be able to work on that piece.
Yeah.
It's also nice getting some sort of response from somebody somewhere down the line. So that's really, really changed. There's also such a consolidation in media companies and stuff right now. They're just so, what's happening now is very disturbing and scary. And the Skydance buying Paramount, Warner, it's Ellison. It's right. It's the guy, it's, from, it's his dad. I mean, it's his fucking studio. And now they're making a bid for Paramount MGM.
Yeah.
And now they're saying they want to take over all of Warner Brothers.
Right.
And they want...
It's just all getting monopolized,
they'll take over CBS News and CNN.
Yeah.
And, already they're making, it's so... There's going to be no dissenting voices, especially what's going on now with the regime down south.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crushing. It's authoritarianism. It's fascism. No question about any of that.
Yeah.
And it's squishing and limiting dissenting voices. So I think that's going to be absolutely terrible as it continues to consolidate and as it's, a few billionaires controlling all of media.
Yeah.
And controlling all of voices and newspapers and this and that. I mean, the whole Washington Post thing and Bezos. I mean, all of it. It's just, it's really, really terrible. and it's terrible internationally, and it's limiting. Actually, I mean, there's as much as there's so much cable and streaming, and there's so many different kinds of shows. It seems like there's more shows than ever.
The thing is, there's more shows than ever, but I feel like with that, in some ways, out the door goes quality control, right? Like, I think they're just producing so much crap right now.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff that's getting made that you're just like, where's the soul in this? Where's the meaning of this? Like, a lot of that kind of stuff. So I feel like a lot of content is getting homogenized, right? And watered down. And
I mean, there are still great filmmakers and
of course
writers and all that.
Yeah.
But I mean, in terms of studio movies, there's a lot of comic book stuff, superheroes, second, third, fourth, and taking old IP and just redoing it again.
Yeah.
Which is just like, come on, you got to think about some new stuff.
Yeah. That's why Sinners did so well, right? Even though it was a Marvel director, Ryan Coogler, right?
Oh, I haven't seen Sinners.
You haven't seen Sinners?
No, I've heard it's great.
I thought it was cool to see somebody do a totally original film in a time when it's just all remakes and superhero movies and all that kind of stuff. I think it's getting a little bit overhyped because it has elements of like superhero-y kind of.
Yeah, because it was Marvel, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the director did Marvel movies, but it was still a film where like this guy had an original idea, vampires in the South during Prohibition, that kind of stuff, and he executed it very well.
Was all original.
It was all original.
Oh, okay. I thought it was some IP that it was.
No,
he just took it and did his own thing.
Nope,
as Michael B. Jordan too, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
No, totally original.
Yeah, they're a great team.
People were like, "That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do more of that."
Yeah.
Make some stuff we haven't seen before.
Yeah. So I was just gonna say those two things, just the process of auditioning. I've been offered a few things over the years, but I'm a journeyman actor. I mean, and it's like I've been fortunate to make a living doing that in my life, and it's up and down all the time. That's just the nature of the beast, and you get used to it, and you can be frustrated, but it's not like mentally up and down in terms of it, like, fucking up your spirit and stuff, because this is what I've been doing. But I still am auditioning mostly for stuff. And so, that's why that kind of the nature of the way that people audition is, fundamentally changed and done. So that frustration, media consolidation, fracturing, squashing, dissenting voices.
Yeah.
Just having the homogenization of entertainment, I guess, in general.
Yeah. Tarantino in his book has talked about how the 70s were a very like boundary pushing era for film and writing and acting. And then he talked about how the 90s were kind of the 70s part 2, because, the 80s became a lot more like you're coming out with stuff like Aliens, Terminator, James Cameron type movies, George Lucas type movies, Star Wars, all that kind of stuff. And then once you get back into the 90s, that's when, Tarantino comes in, but also people like Paul Thomas Anderson and yada, yada. And they're making different stuff again, boundary pushing stuff again. And he sort of has talked about how now we're moving into an era again where it's more like the 80s, where it's like superhero movies and exactly, that kind of stuff.
Well, it is like, the 70s, early 70s. I mean, from Serpico and Conversation and, I was going to say, French Connection.
Yeah, French Connection,
all of those, were just incredible. And late 60s, early 70s, a lot of grit, really compelling stuff. We were never afraid of having bad endings, like bad things happen at the end. And not resolved, and it's not all tied in a bow.
Yeah.
It's really, really, really incredible.
Have you ever seen Sorcerer?
No, I don't know Sorcerer.
Oh, man. Roy Scheider. It came out in 77, the same day that Star Wars came out. So that's why it got kind of overshadowed, because obviously Star Wars was huge. And it's about a bunch of guys who end up in this like desolate town in South America from different areas. One guy was in Israel, and I think he blew something up or whatever. And then so he had to escape the country and go to this place.
Yeah.
Roy Scheider was involved in a bank robbery, so he has to go down there.
Yeah.
And then all of them get hired to do this job for this company where they have to deliver nitroglycerin, the oil well lit on fire.
Yeah.
And they have to blow it up to close it.
Yeah.
And they've got to deliver this nitroglycerin to this oil well.
Yeah.
And so they have to drive through the jungle in these shitty trucks, and they go over these rickety bridges and all this kind of stuff. Great film.
Wow.
And I guess I was just bringing it up because you mentioned like French Connection and that era of film.
Yeah.
And they don't make stuff like that anymore.
No, they don't. At all.
Because we're coming to a close, I'd like to end it with where I could have begun this conversation, but you were the person who inspired me to start acting. So when I was 6, I remember I was at your house. I think it was Halloween, and I found out you were an actor, and I just thought, I want to be an actor.
Yeah.
And so I did for a while. I was doing acting and plays and all that kind of stuff, and it was great, and I loved it. And so I wanted to ask you, where was that for you? What was the first thing that made you go, that's what I want to be?
It was going back to my sisters. It was seeing my sisters perform live, which was really, really thrilling to me, and just was so vibrant, and the energy was so extraordinary. And we, went to movies all the time. My dad was our whole family went to see movies. My dad was a big moviegoer, and he was the person I learned, that you could go to movies by yourself and, it was okay.
Yeah.
Because you just want to see the fucking movie and they don't care about being with anybody else. Because he would go to the movies in the middle of the afternoon or, on the weekend or something like that. And he just wanted to see the movie. And as a little kid, we had this old Bell & Howell. My dad had a Bell & Howell movie projector, reel to reel, 8mm. It wasn't Super 8, it was 8mm, so silent. Although there was this weird technology that they had on some movies that you could get, and it had a sound strip on it.
Okay.
And I'm not sure how it somehow could play sound through an 8mm projector. I don't know how it did that. Anyways, but when I was a kid at the library, the public library, you could go and check out reel-to-reel films.
Wow.
And so I'd watch a lot of comedy stuff. I mean, there'd be Abbott and Costello and some Three Stooges. And then also I was really into the Marx Brothers. I just loved the Marx Brothers. Became an expert like in 6th grade. We had this project in school in 6th grade. You're supposed to do like presentation and, have like audiovisual stuff, and there's people who are doing, break down cells and the brain and all this. And I did the Marx Brothers. And that was just like, I don't know that I told jokes or anything like that. But I had like different historical kind of biographical analysis of the Marx Brothers. And I had seen every fucking movie by the time I was in 6th grade. I was really, really into them. And I was really into old radio shows as well. It used to be Radio Yesteryear was this, you could it started out with cassettes and then eventually went to more digital things later on. But I listened to Mercury Theater on the Air and The Shadow and Fibber McGee and Molly and Lights Out and Suspense and Third Man. And there was all these drama series and stuff like that. CBS Mystery Theater was kind of a newer one they did. And I would just fucking listen to this shit for hours. It just caught my imagination. And I think that's, so I put it down, to my sisters in terms of it being where I go, oh, that's maybe how I can do it, is to be on stage and I want to be like them. But always listened to stories and always loved that. And the radio theater was great because it was all your imagination.
Yeah.
And it was so vivid and it was so like, oh my God.
Yeah.
You could go to so many different places. And there was a lot of sci-fi I'd listen to and mystery and horror. But there was a lot of great comedy too. And then I became infatuated with these movies, with taking the reel-to-reel and watching all of that stuff. So playing my own stuff, and I would just take it out from the library and watch it by myself for hours and hours and hours. And then I really got into musicals. I loved Fred Astaire, and then Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers and Gene Kelly. And remember That's Entertainment, that first one that came out, which was in the movie theaters. And it was, all these musical theaters. And, but I just loved, Betty Davis and Joan Crawford. And I just loved watching this stuff. And it was all from way before my time. It was all 30s and 40s.
Yeah.
So I guess I just was intrigued with those stories and that you could just travel all over the place. I mean, travel in your head to all these stuff. So that's what it inspired. It was kind of like these two different paths, went from the radio shows, which was all by myself. It wasn't like there's a bunch of friends and we all listen to old radio shows. It was just me by myself in a fucking room, listening to all these old radio shows and watching. I also didn't have a lot of friends that were, really into Fred Astaire movies.
Right.
Flicking them off, and Betty Davis,
Yeah.
It was just like, I didn't seek out people who had, I was just very content by myself watching this stuff.
Yeah.
And I'd share it with my dad, that would be great because we'd watch it together, a bunch of stuff. So those things all came together, the radio shows, the old movies, and then seeing my sisters do theater. And then, I was in these youth groups at a couple of different synagogues in Minneapolis, and they'd put on a big play every year. It would be a musical, and it was like Bye Bye Birdie, and it'd be like 70, 80 kids in these plays. And it was 7th grade and 8th grade. And I was in Joseph and his Technicolor Dreamcoat. and so I played Birdie and Bye Bye Birdie, and it was just total fucking blast. I mean, I'm not a singer. I can be an actor who sings or a character who sings, but like I was being in these musicals, and it was so many people in the, but it was a total blast. So I started doing these musicals, big musicals, and I guess I wasn't in a straight play until 10th grade when I was in high school, and we did One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And it was really intense. And I remember we went to like this state mental institution, on a fact-finding thing, and going in there and had this incredible director, this teacher she was an English teacher. And so we did some really intense plays. And then I just started doing play after play after play in high school. But that's when I got that bug. I got the bug in the musical, but it was really doing these straight plays and just all intensity. Like that's all you would do. You'd have your 3-4 hours of rehearsal, and it was just, and then you had to work. It just was,
like you said, a compulsion. You had to do it.
I had to do it. And I advise, students now, if I go in and talk to different classes and stuff like that, sometimes about like, what's to come now? I mean, by that time, they've already kind of committed, so they're into it. But it's always like, you're doing this only because you need to do it. You can't do it for fame or for money or for accolades.
Yeah.
Because it's too fucked up of a business. You got to do it because you have to do it. And it was almost like because you can't do anything else.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that, it's such a challenging, fucked up business to be in. You got to only do it, because you're not going to be rewarded with those other things. They could come your way, but
they may not.
Probably not.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Anyways, that's how I think I got started, was just all of those different modes of entertainment, and then my sisters.
Yeah. Rick Rubin talks about making art just for the sake of making art. So acting just for the sake of acting. Like that's why you do it. Don't do it with an outcome in mind.
Yeah.
Do it because you love it.
Yeah, do it because you love it. And then at a certain point on a practical level, you got to give yourself some kind of horizon. You're doing 5 years or 10 years or whatever it is, and you have to say, what are those things in your life you want to have? And are you able to get by doing that? And, at a certain point, you got to try to maybe shift over and do, something. But yeah, to stick with it, you got to do it just because you want to do it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rob.
Okay, thanks.
And hopefully we'll do a part 2.
I hope so too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.